Will you pray with me? Well, Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. In an enlightening conversation I had this week with several of you, one of you told me how happy you were that I was preaching from Paul and the letters of Paul, that we don't hear enough about Paul and his letters. Probably 2 days later, in another conversation with another member, someone said to me, "When are you ever going to stop preaching about Paul? He's heavy on my heart, he's heavy on my ears, I don't like what he has to say. When are you ever going to stop?" So which camp are you in? More Paul or less Paul? One thing you're going to know you're going to get with Paul when you get Paul is you're going to get an opinion without exception. And you're always going to get nuggets of wisdom whether you solicited them or not. Paul. So for those of you who struggle to make sense of who he is or how he speaks, or whether you think he's braggadocious or knows a little bit more than, or acts as if he knows more than he does, my encouragement is to see that if you can just stay the course and listen for a gem of wisdom, pearl of great price, that might erupt for you in his continued letters. Today's reading was a bit esoteric, huh? His letters run on sentences. It's hard sometimes to pick out the main message that he has to offer us in any text. But what he's trying to offer today is a primer on what is foolishness and what is wisdom. How do you discern what is foolish and what is wise? And you can surmise by verse 20 and 21 that what made the preaching cut today is this question. Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of the age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? Hasn't God exposed all of this as pretentious nonsense? Now, that's an interesting word, pretentious. Thankfully, I don't have to use it a lot. So I looked it up on Google, thank goodness for the online dictionary. What is pretentious? Attempting to impress others by affecting or touting greater importance than perhaps you really have. So for fun, I thought I'd look for some images of pretentiousness. And I came up with a couple, so Ken, can you help us out? Next. Okay, good. And this last one I love. Were the Corinthians really behaving that way? By reading over the last few weeks, we know I've told you the situation there. They were really posturing their social status. They were posturing who had the most material possessions, who had the most spiritual giftedness, who was the most powerful person in the church, who was going to be the lay leader of the church. So imagine any smug group of Christians that you know, and then you have the image of what the Corinthian church was like and what Paul was battling with. But the truth to be told is there's probably a time in all of our lives where we felt particularly confident about who we were, maybe the way we lived when we were a lot younger, or the talents set that we have, where we might have come across a bit pretentious and smug ourselves. We've all struggled with that. Paul tries to impress on the church at Corinth something that is present throughout all of Scripture, that Jesus has an upside-down way of looking at the world. The things that we think are so important and that make us count and that make us beloved are not the things that God cares about at all. And we can count on the fact that God will always look at the world in an upside-down kind of way. You can see this kind of nonsense of Jesus all throughout Scripture. He says it in things like this. In God's kingdom that's not of this world, the first will be last, and the last will be first. Or that whoever wants to be greatest among you needs to take a towel and gird it around your waist and get down on the floor below your disciples and wash their feet and dry them. That the way to gain your life is to give it away, is to just simply lose it. That if you want to be rich, you know how you do that? You give all your possessions away to Operation Night Watch and Big and PDX. That's how you become rich in the Lord. Or that to be full, first you have to be emptied. That to practice your righteousness in front of people, to take a selfie of yourself praying and posting it for God and everybody else to see, is the absolute arrogant, the most arrogant thing we could do. Christ said that we should go into our prayer closet when we're offering a prayer, and that our Father who sees us in private will reward us. I had a friend, a pastor friend, that when we went to lunch one day, I did what I always did in my home. My mother still does this to this day. Gary did not grow up in a home where they prayed around meals. Every time we sit down at the table, my mom will offer a prayer. It's a little bit of a discomfort for him because he's not used to it, very private about the way he handles prayer. So I was out to lunch one day with one of my associate pastor friends in Atlanta and started to bow my head and pray. And she said, "Do you know what I think about what you're doing?" And I said, "No." She said, "I think it's an unnecessary show of piety." That's interesting. A pastor, it's not anything she did in public because she really believed that it was flattering to her. Others would call it a strong witness. It's interesting. Have you watched people in restaurants to see if they do that? Do you do that? I don't know. I thought that was an interesting take. I've never forgot. Those are her exact words. I didn't forget them. An unnecessary show of piety, so she says. You want to talk about upside down scripture? Do you remember the day that Jesus was in the household full of people and there was a lot of busyness and the host was at the table and all of a sudden a woman came up with a jar of perfume and in a wasteful fit she broke open the jar and she poured it all over Jesus' feet. And you remember who groused about it? Do you remember who it was? It was the one who carried the money purse. It was Judas. Groused about it. Gosh, you could have sold that and given that to the poor. And Jesus reminded her, "Oh man, she's preparing me for my execution." Upside down. The gospel is countercultural. It goes against everything that the world says we should do and be, and it made Paul suspect to everyone around him. It was guaranteed to be a hard sell in an age where the Greeks were always about debating philosophy and the next new idea. That's what wisdom was all about. Or if you're a Jew, you know what it was all about is the signs and wonders that God of old did, like parting the Red Sea for them, or writing God's finger, writing the Ten Commandments, not once but twice on Mount Sinai. That's what the Jews were about, signs that showed God's wonder, that proved that God was God. And for the Greeks, the philosophy. Who would have ever guessed that the work of God, the true foundational work of God, was going to be done out on a cross on a hillside, at a very public hillside off Jerusalem, and that Christian history would stake its claim on the victory that was won that day on the cross and 2 days later. How stupid is that? For some, the cross is a story of matchless beauty. It's the ultimate love story of a God who absolutely adores us. So much so that many of us will wear a cross around our neck. Some of us more comfortably than others because we have a great deal of pride in what Christ did for us. And we come and we listen to the message of the good news and the cross, and every Easter Sunday we know the joy of what happened on that cross. That Christ died on the cross to atone for our sins. What do you really think about that? That Christ died on the cross to atone for our sins. Is it beautiful? Is it unparalleled selfishness? Is it archaic? Is it a myth? Is it filicide? A father who allows his son to be killed? Now folks, take a deep breath with me. For those of us who were raised in the church, the cross is a story that we've known from the time we were children. But not everybody knows and understands that story or can wrap their arms around it or can accept it. Those who come from another faith tradition, for example, or those who are struggling with faith may struggle with that story. That the only way that a world could be redeemed is through a father giving up his son. Think about that logically and put yourself outside of the faith tradition. It was pretty interesting this week as I was talking to the confirmands about Christ growing up and the early church coming up in the Roman society and saying that the Romans didn't really understand Christianity. And for much of the time, before they had deeper understanding, do you know what they thought about them? That they were cannibals. Now think about that. Why would they think that? The body of Christ. Do you see what I'm saying? Get outside of your context and you can begin to understand that for some it's a struggle, despite the fact that it's the foundation of the Christian faith, the cross and the resurrection. For some people, they struggle with this message. In one of my churches back in Atlanta, actually Tennessee, the Cherokee United Methodist Church, one of our groups was just studying a book that came out in 2007 by Christopher Hitchens called The Portable Atheist. Essential readings for the atheist. One of my Sunday school classes read that book. Do you know why? Because they wanted to learn how to dialogue with people about what they believed or what they didn't believe. One of the things that I did when I did my mission overseas is I read another book that he had written called God Is Not Great. Let me tell you, that was a hard read. But I needed to get into the minds of the Czechs and understand why they felt the way they felt. And it opened doors to Gary and I that would never have been open to us because we were willing to say, tell us what you believe and why. And build enough of a relationship that they could say, well, tell us about this Christ that you report. And it happened. Remember last week I talked about the principle that Stephen Covey always promoted and that's very Christ-like? First, seek to understand than to be understood. Folks, it's not up to us to save people. The Holy Spirit does that. Our job is to engage people in conversation and dialogue and to understand the mysteries of faith. Some people do struggle with the doctrine of atonement. Some people struggle with blood songs. Jackie Ashenbrenner said, don't you dare sing a blood song at my funeral. She didn't even want me to preach about resurrection because she wasn't sure. I've never had that request before. But that's where she was. Folks, our church is full of people all over the map. I think it's a big tent and there's room for all of us. But let me ask you this. Is it possible that sometimes you and I try to be too much like the Corinthians and overthink things? Try to figure things out. We Westerners are just classic about gotta know this age of enlightenment. We gotta know everything. Well, no, we don't. There are some things about God that are just Nancy Drew-like. They're full of mystery. And that we'll never fully understand. Is it possible that we don't give faith enough credit and enough place in our life? There are some things that I just know that I will never understand. Like the mystery and the beauty of the cross. Or like the empty tomb that happens every Sunday. Every Easter Sunday. And I got to preach on it again. This tomb that just keeps showing up empty every Easter. Like the mystery of how I connect to something beyond myself when I pray. And like Wayne here, I feel a warmth and a presence that I can't understand. Or how I've had the privilege through the years of counseling people in the midst of difficulties in their marriage. And somehow, despite me or through some of the tools that were offered, the Holy Spirit did the work and the marriages stayed together. And in many cases became stronger. For these things, or this story of my own. Oh, I've told you a lot about Annie and her anorexia. Did I tell you I struggled with anorexia for 12 years? Off and on, drove my family and the doctors in our community crazy. For 12 years, I didn't love myself or my body. I never thought that I would have a healthy relationship with food, much less carry a child to term. God acts in foolish ways to show us incredible acts of love and acceptance. And for the things I don't understand, I call it faith, and I'm okay with that. I think of the young woman who came to my side of the altar in one of our healing services in Atlanta back in 1996. We had just started doing these services in the church, and she came to my side of the altar, and she confessed that when she was a young girl, she was very promiscuous. and that she had not one but 2 abortions. And she came racked in pain. Could God ever forgive her for what she did? And I simply laid my hands on her, anointed her with oil, and prayed with her. And she left that altar a different person. In fact, guys, I struggled with whether to tell you this or not, but I'm going to tell you. Because some people do have an ability to see things we don't see. She made an appointment to come back and see me later that week, and she said, Michelle, when I went back to my seat, I had a vision, and I saw 2 children playing where you and I were praying. You don't have to believe that. I don't care whether you believe it or not. For her, it was real, and for her, it was a confirmation that she was forgiven. And there are people who do see those things. Not all of us, but for her, it was a confirmation that all is well. Don't ask me how that works. I can't explain it. We'll have to let faith do its work. As I close, I offer you this. Do you remember the 1993 movie with the looker? At the time, he still is a looker. Remember John Glenn, Ed Harris? And the actor Scott Glenn, who was the astronaut Alan Shepard. The movie, The Right Stuff. It chronicles the 15 years of the start of the American space program, particularly the Mercury astronauts. And it tells the stories of their struggles and their achievements in the midst of a world that was in political turmoil and technological innovation. That kind of sounds like today. Those who made the movie said it was an epic in itself. Its locations were hard-earned. Its special effects had to be changed along the way. One man lost his ear on the set. Another man lost his life. But more than 3 decades later, the film critic says The Right Stuff still resonates, a testament of incredible feats of bravery and sacrifice and intelligence of which humans are capable, right down to their inherent absurdity. Think of the absurdity of climbing into tin cans mounted on ballistic missiles and blasting into space. How absurd is that? But that's sometimes the heights we go to because we want to understand mystery, we want to embrace it. We want to have that thrill of that which we do not know. So originally the sermon was to be entitled The Right Stuff, to say that that's what God gives you and I the power to do through the power of the cross. He gives us the power to be the church. He gives us the power to preach and live the gospel. He gives us the power to do and have the right stuff to do the work of God. But more than us having the right stuff through Him, I think God had the right stuff. Because God cared enough about us to step down, to be with us and among us, and to love us and entrust the role of the church to us. Not only the role of the church, but the meal of the church, which is full of mystery and wonder and possibility. Friends, God always acts first. Lest we think we're so special, we only respond to God's love. God always acts first. God has the right stuff. And here it sits, ready for your eating. Amen?